Hello and welcome to the live hangout where I'm joined by the guys from Megacon Games. We're broadcasting tonight from the new Riverside studios, so if it all falls over, it's not my fault. I'm just going to pack up and go home. So, guys, look, thank you very much for joining us on this. Well, it's a cold evening here. I don't know what it's doing over there. You guys are all in different locations, so if you could take a moment to introduce yourselves, describe what you do in Megacon Games, and more importantly, tell me if it's sunny and hot over there. Brian, do you want to kick off?
Sure. My name is Brian Schotten. Look, I have a little bar down here. It is not sunny and warm here. It's actually cold. I am a game designer, co-owner of Megacon Games. I do almost all the Merc stuff, and then along with Kenny, do the Myth stuff.
Kenny, do you want to introduce yourself, mate?
Yeah, I do. My name is Kenny Sims. I'm a game designer and a co-owner at Megacon. I've done a lot of the Myth monsters and quests, and I've also been doing a lot of the revisions for the content that we've released so far. And I've done Emergence Event. That's something that'll come out later.
Keith, you're up next.
Yeah. Hi, Internet. My name's Keith Lowe. I am a co-owner as well of Megacon Games. And I do the art direction, and I touch all the properties in one way or another, either doing some illustration or managing some of the other artists with another art director as well. So if it's something visual, I'm a part of it. That's my role.
And Tom.
Yeah, I'm Tom Mason. I'm the miniatures director for Megacon Games. I direct all the sculpting and do a majority of it myself as well. I've primarily been doing Merc stuff, especially recently. So, we just wrapped up Recon. And Myth was done before I came on board, but yeah, we'll be working on some of that soon.
I'm involved in that soon.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Well, guys, a couple of days ago we put up a post. Well, actually, I'll take this back a step further. We've just completed Myth Week. We've had a big, dedicated week to all things Myth, where we've been exploring all of the characters. We've been exploring some of the key game mechanics, like the darkness and the monsters and all that, the kind of artificial intelligence that drives this cooperative hack and slash game.
Right.
A couple of days ago, we put up a post saying we were going to do the live hangout and invited people to submit some questions. So I'm going to pick one or two questions from that list just to pose to you and just to have a general chat about where Megacon is headed, where you've been, and everything in between. Now, to kick off with, because it's clearly one of the questions that we get asked most, is last year you had this incredibly successful Kickstarter in Myth. It was a board game that came out of nowhere, and on Kickstarter it just grew and grew and grew, and you knocked down an epic amount of stretch goals.
Yeah.
It then came to the hard work, because everybody knows that doing a 30-day Kickstarter is a killer, but then you have the delivery after that.
Right.
So, what have you learned from your Kickstarter experience? It's you've suffered things like delays, kind of logistical things and stuff like that. I'm sure it's been a huge learning experience for you guys as well. Do you want to kind of bring us up to speed on what you learned from the entire process?
Sure. I'll start. We learned we don't want to do fulfillment ever again. Not at all. Not even a little bit. We also learned that it's tough to negotiate the costs of shipping a year in advance, because since the time we started the Kickstarter, postage for everyone has gone up about 5 to 6 times. It's just, it's things like that, letting someone deal with logistics and letting someone deal with fulfillment is really the only way we're going to do it going forward. It's just too much of a hassle. We've sunk what, not hours, not even days, but weeks in fulfillment, where we could have been doing game design or any number of other things that are much more valuable to us as a company.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing we learned is some of the other things would be direct contact with some of the manufacturers in China, getting there, going there, meeting them, seeing what they have to deal with firsthand. And we've never done that before, and since it's happened, and we kind of understand their systems and their timing a little bit better than we did. And then the last is going to surprise some people. But we're pretty good friends with the guys at Mantic, and I think they understood this before we did, which is having a Kickstarter that goes through a bunch of stretch goals and makes $1 million is all fine and dandy. But having a Kickstarter that makes $500,000 that everything is designed for as far as the stretch goals, and you don't have to design anything after that, and you don't have to do any sculpts after that, is something you can fulfill very, very quickly, and it's something we're looking to do more and more of.
Yeah, so you're looking at the actually managing the Kickstarter experience, because a runaway success can actually become a runaway pain in the neck. Is that
absolutely.
Sure. I think the fact that, kind of starting from the ground up with this Kickstarter too, I mean, with Mercs, boy, a ton of fun. But, as much of a hobby as it was a business,
that's right,
because we did it on the side. And so, making the leap, okay, we're committing to this, to, leave our careers to do this. And what a joy to be able to do that, but all the challenges that come with it. And now, where do we put all this product? Well, we need a warehouse. So, now you need the insurance on that warehouse, and does it have a loading dock, and who are the the drayage companies, who's going to be our fulfillment partners? We have those, with shipping, okay, boy, we need to get some competitive rates. How do we negotiate those? And the carriers helping us, and just so many things, and you just don't know until you do it, and there's just no other ways to say it than that. It's like,
that's right.
Like so many things in life. I mean, until you commit and do them, you discover how wonderful it is and how hard it is too. Every day is a challenge, which is a blessing, but it's also like, wow, I don't know how to do this today, but it's got to get done. So I guess this is what we're doing. So.
We have to get a lawyer in Europe to go talk to customs to negotiate our container out of customs. How do we do that? I don't know.
It's fine.
I think it's one of the things that's definitely worth remembering about this is at the end of your Kickstarter, it had probably blown way past what you guys reasonably expected when you entered it. And at the end result of all of this is you've created a game that has had to have a global launch. You've had to have it manufactured. You've had to have the logistics of distributing it. And we're talking about a core box that realistically you could club baby seals to death with it.
Absolutely.
We're still surprised by the weight of the thing. So where do we stand today? Approximately. I know it's always. You're tracking hundreds and hundreds of orders, but roughly where do we stand today on myth fulfillment of the Kickstarter?
Most of the initial fulfillment is like 100% done. We just had some models that were it was short on. It was our fault, but that's what people are missing right now. They've got the base game, or should have it. If they don't, we're correcting those issues right now. But besides that, there's just a few models that we need to still get out there.
One of the other things we learned was not to do a pledge manager. Let people do pledge manager, because the pledge manager not only was difficult for anyone using it, it was difficult for us to get real numbers from, and people will see with the Recon. The pledge manager for Recon is fantastic. It's unbelievable. It's simple
tried
to
and
use.
true and it's used by other groups as well. So that's what they do. That is their
Yep.
business.
Yep.
So from a pledge manager perspective, you went with a different system then for Mercs Recon, yeah?
Yeah, we went with an
Mhm.
established one.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you some questions I didn't get the chance to ask you even during Myth Week. And the first one is there are some rumors that swirl around about where the whole concept of Myth came up with. One of which is that you guys thought of it on a flight to a convention. Can you give us an insight into where the whole idea for Myth came from and how it came together?
Well, it definitely did come about on a flight. Brian and I I want to say we were heading out to
PAX
Seattle.
Prime. Yeah, PAX Prime.
And really just wanted to do something fantasy because, I've always been into that. And Brian had just come off another project that he didn't get to see fulfilled. And we were like, well, let's do this because we got to get something out, And so we just started working on Myth right there in the plane.
Yeah.
And it just blew up from there.
Yeah.
How long were you working on the game for?
Gosh, a year and a half before we actually even talked about doing it for real.
Yeah.
And then Keith and Kenny and I have a meeting and say, well, this is something we think would work well with Kickstarter. Do we want to explore doing it? And because there was always something that if Mercs became something that it has become, then we could use the money for Mercs to do Myth. And it ends up being the opposite because we found Kickstarter. Kickstarter really helped Myth, and it's helped Mercs become what it should be because Kickstarter is a fantastic marketing tool. I mean, suddenly we had 6,000 people who knew about Mercs because our name, and it kind of went from there. But yeah, it was on a plane going to Seattle, and it started with simple ideas. We wanted Kenny and I are friends a long time, and we used to play old school D&D Second Edition, and games like Gauntlet and Diablo, and games like EverQuest. I would say EverQuest, which is an MMO, if you're familiar with it. Myth is strongly influenced by our time in EverQuest and what it took to do certain dungeons and raids and stuff like that. Because unlike modern MMOs, EverQuest is a pretty harsh environment.
On the topic of MMOs, you guys have often said how influenced you are by MMOs, even in terms of how you structure your support and your ongoing support of Myth the game. Can you expand further on that, on just how MMOs are influencing the shape of the business that you guys are building?
Well, one of the main things is something we even are doing right now is we're going to have what we just call patches, just like MMOs are patched, right? They usually have a free content added in, and they maybe add in some unique abilities. I mean, from the MMO standpoint. From our standpoint, we are implementing revisions to cards. So I put stuff out for the community to look at, and they give their feedback, and we make some changes where we feel they're necessary. And then I also created a small story, and I thought, well, we can just do this every year, and we can start making kind of like modules, if you will, like from old D&D. Like, here's a set story, and that's what we plan on doing from here on out.
Yeah,
In
and
terms
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Brian. No, go ahead.
It just creates an environment that we hope the community looks at and says, hey, this is something we can get involved in, because not only is the stuff we're driving, the community drives these things. They've created a lot of monsters and quests, and we provide them templates to do all these things, and we just want people to go nuts with it and do it themselves, and just provide an environment or a space for the game to grow from our perspective, but a game to grow from the community's perspective. And I would be sad if the Myth we're playing in 2 years is the same as the Myth we're playing now.
Well, I've got to say, from Myth, one of the things that blew us away most was the community's involvement and the number of community members that had got stuck in and started to create tools,
Right.
even rewrites of the rulebook. You know, a guy decided he was going to take at it and try and reconstruct it from a different perspective, and that kind of stuff is invaluable.
Absolutely.
Have you with it being such a huge part of your ethos, and it is entirely refreshing because I remember one of not only mine but a lot of people's favorite board games. The owner of that board game decided to rip out all of the community involvement. So it's a hugely refreshing thing to see a company actually encouraging growth through the community. But have you considered empowering the community over the next years with digital tools, you know, like apps and things like that? Is that kind of thing on the radar?
You want to tackle that, Keith?
Yeah, well, I mean, we definitely would like to dig into some more apps. Right now, you know, we've been focusing on getting the Black Ops program up, which is supposed to go up Friday. We're going to have a Black Ops Friday. That's what we're hoping to call it, to release that, which, you know, is intended to foster, you know, the folks that are already out and showing it and demoing it and you know, proclaiming, hey, this game is fantastic and it's super fun to play. So that will be a resource for those folks. But after that, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd love to come up with some apps that. What's that, Brian?
I was going to say that same group is who we're talking about doing apps with.
Yeah, you know, for example, like an app that, you know, tracks your, you know, your hero board and your stats and things like that, and you know, just track some of that information, you know, that can, you know, we have, you know, hero tracking sheets for when you're going through, you know, multiple quests and you want to, you know, follow your characters as they progress along and level up and things like that. So something to track that. I mean, yeah, a lot more apps that aren't, you know, required to play the game, but just, you know, accentuated or, you know, a different approach.
Yep.
We're now at the stage where there's you're getting towards the end now of the fulfillment of the Kickstarter, but the core game is also been in retail stores now. It's where it's going out through the retail chains and the distribution networks. For those of us that didn't back it and are kicking ourselves to death because we didn't back it, what lies ahead from the current Myth Kickstarter campaign? You know, because you did knock down a ton of stretch goals.
Yes.
What are we looking forward to coming through the retail pipeline now to expand our core Myth box?
Well, basically, the Kickstarter allowed us to produce a year's worth of product that's going to be released in retail and then some. Obviously, the core box is out, and I believe the Undead are out. Yeah. The next faction that will be released will be the Rats, I believe, or the Tailless, and then after that will be the Elementals. And basically, every 2 months we're going to have new minions, new captains, new bosses. We're going to filter in between those releases new quest packs, new item packs, new heroes, extra layers, traps. All those things that aren't Kickstarter exclusive will find their way to retail, and then, for instance, like we have, we did a Spriggan, which is a Kickstarter exclusive miniature, but the deck itself will find its way and function in when we release the Druid, and so those kinds of things. So there's beyond even what's in the Kickstarter. There's going to be stuff released that everything will be in retail except for those things that are Kickstarter exclusive. So.
Yeah, that was a question. Have you guys worked on past what was unlocked in the Kickstarter? You know, can we expect some surprises down the line of stuff that's been developed outside of that sphere?
Yes.
Well, I think this is sorry, Brian.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly, Kenny, focusing on the patches right now has brought new items and new quests. And new, characters, like there's new mini bosses, there's new agent. so I know the Firewall quest that Kenny has been doing is new content that might see itself in the future in a more physical form. So that's one aspect. Brian, go ahead, please.
No, I was laughing because I want to see half your face. You're like hidden on.
I'm trying to like cinematically prop myself, you know. I've got like the.
We didn't stop designing for Myth. Not really. We continue to have ideas. We designed 4. I'm sure something will come up in this particular Q&A, which is the next iteration of Myth, which is Myth Journeyman. Obviously, we did a lot of revisions on the cards and stuff, so that stuff never stopped. And when we were doing those revisions, it was with the eye of where it's going. One of the things that, when we put out Myth, what we had designed and tested, we didn't know if it was going to succeed, and so you don't plan for years down the line. And so the revisions of the cards allowed us to actually kind of incorporate the changes we were going to have to make anyway sooner. So, those changes will be available in Myth 2.0, which will probably, we printed a lot of these games, and we have very few left. So we'll actually have to do a reprint very soon, which leads us to the second Kickstarter. So. Yeah.
Well, on the topic of the second Kickstarter, you've mentioned Myth 2.0. I have 2 questions. Well, I have 3 questions. When is it? What are we likely to see? And who do I have to come over there and kiss? Some lion men.
Some what? Lion men?
Lion men. Somebody had posted a question on our site about lion men, and as soon as I read it, I went, I couldn't agree with this guy more.
Yeah, totally.
We have a lot of ideas for monsters in Myth too. I mean, it's just which ones are we going to use and which ones are going to be revealed first.
That's right.
So when can we expect, approximately, because we know these things shift, but when can we expect the next Myth Kickstarter?
Well, this will allow Tom to speak up. Recon's basically, the miniatures are all done and everything is wrapped up for the most part in the next couple weeks. After that, we move right into real figuring out what the next what the Kickstarter is going to have in it. And I think, if the guys will shake their heads yes or no, but I'm sure we're talking about February or March for Myth Kickstarter. To Journeyman specifically, and that gives Tom, who we didn't have before, an opportunity to really tackle a lot of the miniatures. So we plan on going into this next Kickstarter for Myth, one with a more structured Kickstarter, one that's not going to, it's not going to force us to design 17 things afterwards. It's going to be blocked. It's going to be nice. It separates into what we call the light heroes and the dark heroes, and we deal with locations. That's basically the idea behind Myth, is we can go into any kind of area and play with the myths. And in this case, we're going to play with the Mediterranean for sure, specifically Egypt. We're going to have dogmen, so I don't know why we wouldn't have lion men.
Dogmen's close. Dogmen's close.
Yeah, a little bit of the Norse myths with this. So the answer is February or March. Absolutely lots of things. We have dogmen, we have little steampunk mechano creatures, minions that when they move, there actually is no captain, but when they move together, they become the captain. So if one moves into another minion, it becomes a captain. Pretty, really interesting, cool things.
Are you expecting the game to change much, guys, or is Myth 2 going to be a different game from Myth 1, or is it taking Myth 1 and expanding it, or have you decided yet just what kind of direction you might go?
Well, it's definitely going to be like we're expanding it. We're allowing the heroes to grow more. We are adding a few mechanics into it, like dual wielding will be introduced. So that's a new mechanic on how to use your cards, interrupt cards, and specifically. But yeah, with that and the way that we're going to implement some of our new types of items, there's definitely, I would say it's more of an expansion of everything.
Yeah, the heroes will a lot of really focusing on the more campaign aspects of it, because with the first one we didn't know what was going to happen, but now we know we want extended journeyman masters. So there's a much more focused campaign system that even adds another kind of layer called the mythic hero, which is a hero almost like single death, you die. We like you die kind of stuff. If the players don't want to play once dead, always dead, I guess that's their prerogative. But we find that it creates a little bit of tension where there may not be. So yeah, stuff like that.
Okay, guys, I'm so looking forward to seeing that. So I think we'll all be getting ready now for February or March. Now, Myth isn't the only Kickstarter you guys went through. You also had Mercs Recon, which happened a little later last year, or no, it was this year. So can you tell us a little bit about Mercs Recon for those of us that didn't manage to get in on that Kickstarter, and what the game is about, and how what's in it, basically. What did you manage to unlock?
Yeah, well, there's a lot with Mercs. I mean, people think they got a lot with Myth, and they did. But Recon, we took kind of this really cool approach where we were basically able to just go ahead and essentially finish Mercs. I mean, not to say that that's all that there will ever be, but we've always talked about doing the rest of the factions, which now people know they're unlocked. We've got 12 now, all done. Everybody will have 10 figures, like we always wanted to do. Plus, there's all these extras. Stuff can be used with Recon or tabletop. Just open up a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, and really, Recon allows us to move from metals to plastics, which is pretty important fiscally for us. It's tough to be a gigantic game and produce metals anymore. And so if you're going to be, printing thousands of games, you can't do metals, not really. And so this allowed us to transfer all those to metals, which allows us to put out starter kits and reinforcement packs for every single group, for every Megacon there is, and then others that were only revealed in, say, like the Pledge Manager, because EIC, or the East India Company, was only introduced in the Pledge Manager. It's been unlocked, and people are going to get that, and it was one of the last few factions yet to be really decided. And so all that stuff is designed, all the cards and all the miniatures for both the Recon and the tabletop all happen at the same time, which is a really nice way to do it. And they all get manufactured at the same time, at least molded. Yeah, we have all the miniatures done at this point for Recon, and all the miniatures done for Mercs 2.0 now. That's what I'm talking about. It's a really nice way to do it. And now we just produce what we need to produce and release when we need to release.
In terms of the Mercs 2.0, I know a lot of people now are getting really excited about the second edition of the rule set. How far away is it, and is there what kind of changes might people be able to expect in that?
Sure. I mean, I'm working on it right now. I mean, that's what I'm doing right now. People that, well, hey, why aren't you on Myth Kickstarter talking? Oh, it's because I'm actually writing and dealing with Mercs 2.0 tabletop. I mean, we've gone through Myth, we've gone through Recon, and now I'm in Mercs 2.0, and then Kenny and I will start tackling Myth shortly. But some interesting changes, some nothing earth-shattering, just kind of polishing and making things a little bit more streamlined. For instance, things like flanking is much easier now. You don't have to have another person in melee combat. Reaction is there's reaction has another little bubble underneath it with a 0, +1, or -1, or it's -1, -2, +1, +2, and a 0. But you'll be able to, when you roll initiative, based off that little number in the reaction, you can modify your initiative up 1 or down 1 if it's a 1, for instance. Not all of them will have it, but allows the player to not let initiative or a poor initiative roll really dictate victory or defeat. In addition, melee is quite a bit different. The numbers and the mechanics are still basically the same, but every single person with a melee stat can move into an attack in melee. But the people who are really good at melee, like the assassin and spy and things like that, they have extra special bonuses, and just they won't miss. They won't miss at all anymore. And that's the other thing. Single-shot weapons. I was not pleased watching tournaments and someone has a single-shot weapon and they're rolling 4s. Well, that's a 60% chance to hit. That's not good enough. Not for a single-shot weapon. And so we have we have mechanics like set and rip, but now we have mechanics for aiming. That if people want to take the time to aim, they can then lower a single-shot weapon even further. Things like that. Just polishing, streamlining. Combat is much faster now, but the initiative phase is much more important.
You had mentioned that that every corporation has reinforcement. Can I just get a confirmation on that? So, every corporation actually has reinforcement, and is everything moved to plastic as well?
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, the base squad is 6 guys, and there's 10 now, so yeah, we've got the 4 extras for everybody.
Yeah, I don't know if people on here can see it, but Keith is putting up art for all kinds of stuff on his little extra feed there. Every single figure is basically done at this point. Every faction has 10. So there's 12 factions with 10 figures, and each faction plays decidedly different. So it's pretty cool.
So Keith, what are we looking at here?
So this was the last team that was unlocked in the Kickstarter on the Pledge Manager side. This is EIC. And so, this is now member in the group. So I just put my head down and just start cranking them all out. This particular character is a breacher, so he's got some kind of a breaching gel tool, and EIC, they have some like bionics they kind of do. They have some assimilation, so there's a little bit more tech incorporated into their physical bodies. So it's just fun things we're doing there. So that's we're just kind of tying the knots on all the merch stuff. The nice thing, we talked about a lot of this is the art or the tabletop, and the recon. They all kind of work together, and models the same way. Merch tabletop. They've already got their nice models and recon. These always a big show. And they're already going to look great.
Yeah.
It was painted so fast.
Okay. Well, look, guys. Before we call it quits on this, Brian, I've noticed the Spacious game going up on the Megacon Games site. What else have you guys got up your sleeves there? Are there other kind of new properties and new games that you guys are currently working on?
You should start, Kenny, because Emergence Event is your game.
All right. Well, we do have a event coming out. It's completely finished, being produced right now. Yep. And it's a space exploration resource management game.
It's a good game.
You control your captain by a deck of cards, and you'll be exploring the galaxy and uncovering stories about what happened in that galaxy. The tiles are all modular, so the galaxy actually gets set up differently each time. It's been received very well so far, so I have high hopes for it.
Are there a possibility of new intellectual properties coming from you guys and maybe even coming on Kickstarter?
Oh, yes. Emergence Event is a standalone game, but the world in which Emergence Event takes place, we're going to explore quite a bit more in the future. We also have Merc's Conflict, which is the dice game. It was part of the Kickstarter. You could have got it if you wanted. It's actually on a boat coming soon. If it could just get through customs, we'd be okay. But you know, we have Merc's RPG that is in beta right now. Early beta, but beta nonetheless. And people can go to the Megacon Games website and download it and check and see what it's all about. We'd love to get feedback on it. In addition, we have something we can't talk about yet, but when we can, it's going to be pretty cool.
Yep.
Yeah. And then we have a couple other games being worked on in addition. Some by designers in studio and some by designers outside of studio. So sometimes, like we have a little dinky card game that we just have to decide when we want to release it. But it has nothing to do with anything we do. It's just a little fun, quick game. And that, you know, yes, the answer is yes.
Well, look, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to join us this evening. It's been great to get a chat with you. I'd like to apologize to you. I know we've had some sound issues during that. We will be looking into that to try and see how we can kind of reduce that for future hangouts we have with these guys and everyone else. But look, thank you very much for watching. Thanks to the guys very much for joining us. If you're interested in Myth or Mercs, make sure to head on over to peacesupport.com. We just finished the Myth Week where we have an absolute metric ton of stuff that you can watch and chew through. And we also have the Nervous Club. So be sure to go check that out. We have some great how to play games on there. Okay, we'll call it a that. Thank you once again, guys, and we'll not leave it too long before getting you back on. Take care, guys.
Thank you, Warren.
Thanks.